The Tarim Basin mummies. I think most of you will have heard of these, since they are in many ways exceptional. I didn't look to make an episode on them, but searching for swastikas on the net automatically leads you there sooner or later. Well, now I can say that the evidence is for a connection between these people, who are, in my opinion, certainly pointing to an actual lost civilization, and the swastika is not at all that compelling. But let us take a look at these famous so-called white mummies of the Tarim Basin, and then also at the ceramics of a contemporary culture in China, the Majiayao, also formerly known as a period in the Gansu Yangshao culture. These are the pictures I have encountered, together with the message that they are proof for the existence of an advanced race. The swastika on an artifact found in the vicinity of the burial ground seems to be tossed in, as if to underline this statement. The pitiful quality of the image and the way it forever returns as the sole so-called evidence, and the eagerness by which this archaeological trove is being claimed, made me rather skeptical. This need for putting out spurious claims on episodes of history is no doubt at least one of the things humans seem to share globally. So, what about it? The Tarim Basin is located in Central Asia, in the province Xinjiang, which is the Uyghur Autonomous Region of West China. The river Tarim is what is called a permanently migrating river. Its riverbed has always changed over time. The larger part of the basin has now turned into desert. This desert is called Taklamakan, and it is bordered at the north and south side by different branches of the Silk Road network. Currently, the region is scarcely inhabited by Uyghur mainly. There is, of course, a lot to say about this ancient Turkic people, but no place and time for this here. And now it may be worth noting that this population arrived here around the end of the first millennium AD from northern Mongolia. After the Uyghur Khaganate started to crumble, the Chinese Tang dynasty, with whom they often allied against other nations, described them as the 9 tribes. I don't know of any relation between these people and the mummies found under the sand, but we need to look at the enormous time span between their occurrence and the time proposed by archaeologists in which the ancient basin dwellers lived. So, desertification started around the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. That is when the most famous of these mummies were buried. Although the burial site at xiaohe had been discovered in 1930s already, it took almost a century before archaeologists had the chance to do their work at the site, I think for obvious reasons. Turns out that mummies were only a small part of what would follow. At least 330 specimens have now been recovered, the largest amount ever. In different sites in the desert, the sands cover several ruins of ancient cities, and it is assumed that the mummies belong to the inhabitants of the Tarim Basin of 5 millenniums ago. They represent a span of history dating from 1800 BC to as recently as the Qing dynasty of 1644 to the beginning of the 1900s. So who are these people? They have been wrapped in oxhide bags, sealing them off from the air and thus preserving them very well. Some mummies were buried in wooden boat-like coffins, each coffin marked with a long pole ending either in an oar shape or a torpedo shape, depending on the gender of the mummies. These people were found to be an admixture from populations originating from both the West. Historians are now pointing to Anatolia for an origin, also to Central Asia with the Altai and the regions occupied by the Afanasevo culture as an origin, and to the east, more precisely South Siberia, Northern Mongolia, but also India, implying that the Tarim Basin had been occupied by an admixed population since the early Bronze Age already. Considering the unique genetic haplotypes and particular archaeological culture, the admixed population might have had a relationship with populations that settled in South Siberia during the Bronze Age. This would be the earliest genetic evidence of such an admixed population that settled in the Tarim Basin. Chances are that these people have been here since generations already before that. An interesting site to explore may be Ayala Mazar, which has been discovered around 2011 in the middle of the desert, also containing a cemetery with mummies with European and North Mongolian DNA. These also date back to the early Bronze Age and are similarly dressed as the ones found in the east of the desert. They were all wearing similar leather boots, woolen capes and felt hats tied with a specific red cord. Another proposal of their origin is the theory of a Turanis people who supposedly migrated here from the South Himalayas, but I will leave that to others to figure out. The rich find included several artifacts. I've dug for the supposed swastika, but all which turns up is this one particular picture. Every reverse search leads nowhere apart from dodgy sites and blogs who repackage that same story over and over again, if you know what I mean. The swastika itself looks like one of the variations that indeed can be found in the Eurasian steppes and also in the Danube region. I don't think I need to explain how eager some of certain beliefs have been in the past to claim the Tarim Basin mummies as their own ancestors, or the ancestors of that or this race. Ironically, the extremes seems to touch yet again. Keep in mind that not all the mummies found in the Taklamakan have Caucasoid features. The trove in the Tarim Basin is fairly recent, and the environment in which archaeologists have to work is far from ideal. Similar to Egypt, desert sand covers up anything exposed again in no time. And then there is the Chinese government and Chinese nationalism. And I reckon that is the reason why it is so hard to find much online on the artifacts that have been found in the area of the, in and around the desert. I don't doubt that they are online somewhere, but my Chinese is not that good, see? I have linked some papers of researchers who looked at cultures that roamed the North Mongolian steppes 5,000 years ago and earlier, for anyone who is curious enough. And like I said, there have been different proposals. One is offered by Mair, who sees or saw a link to Tokaria, an ancient region in the North Indian mountains south of the Himalaya. That area connects to what is often called the Aryan homelands region. I recently talked about in my video on the hairy ants of Herodotus. But the fact that the Tokarian script has been detected on artifacts dug up in the Tarim Basin does not necessarily lead to the origins of these Caucasian mummies. The Taklamakan is surrounded by trade routes. The DNA of the mummies shows a multicultural presence on these routes. The question remains for now if these people actually played a role in the spreading of the swastika symbol. Chances are, sooner or later, there will be real evidence for this. About 2,000 kilometers east from the Taklamakan, however, there is a region where the swastika had been in use time before these people arrived in what is now China. In the larger region located where the provinces Gansu, Qinghai, and Sichuan border, and the upper Yellow River flows, several sites have been uncovered which are dated to have existed between 4000 and 2000 BC. The life of the ancient Chinese was simple during Neolithic. People spent their life with farming and animal husbandry. The arts during the Neolithic period were classified into a mosaic of 22 regional cultures by an archaeologist. According to the archaeological findings, art began to take shape in ancient China around 7500 BC. By then, ceramic arts was already popular. It involves a series of 4 steps: forming, firing, decorating, and refining. The first evidence of the use of pottery was seen in 18,000 BC. The art of pottery evolved with the time. After around 4000 BC, the color ceramic art started to appear in China. The Majiayao culture, formerly known also as the Yangshao, produced some of these first red and black painted ceramics. Like most Chinese Neolithic cultures, they also were agricultural. These jars served as storages, and many have been retrieved out of burial places where they have served as grave goods. The swastika or swastika-like symbols are not always too obvious, but at times still undeniable. There are different answers possible why they used this symbol. As a potter's mark, it is probably probably not a potter's mark, since the craftsman's signature is supposed to be added underneath the vessel. I was thinking about the hypothesis of Kalyanaraman, like I mentioned in part 5.1, Saraswati Swasti. In short, he puts forward the hypothesis that the swastika makes part of an early Sanskrit script used by trade and craftsmen, by which they can communicate over a large distance with their fellow tradesmen on ores and minerals and the alchemical and or metallurgical secrets of their trade. Kalyanaraman proposes that the swastika is a symbol appointed to zinc. And research shows that the potters of the Majiayao culture knew already in the 4th millennium BC how zinc oxide glazes add to the durability of ceramics. It is what one might reasonably call an alchemical technique that is still used to this day by ceramists. Another possibility is that these vessels were decorated on demand. In this case, the swastika could be the symbol of a tribe or family, a Neolithic name tag, so to say. We will see this come back in a later episode. Do the decorations have anything to do with the night sky, maybe? I will link a PDF on the astronomical views of ancient Chinese as proposed by John Didier. Also, considering the establishment of long-distance trade at such an early stage, there is room for the possibility that the symbol was introduced into China via one of the trade routes. Maybe its use was merely a commercial trick in an attempt to make a product that is more suitable for export. The Majiayao in particular had specialized pottery workshops going on several locations throughout the region. I can easily accept that the swastika indicates that these people were in contact with other cultures. The Majiayao phase of this culture went over into the Banshan phase around 2500 BC and ended with the Machang phase 500 years later. We still find the occasional swastika, but for what I have seen, both these phases reflect a far less developed skill. I hear that some archaeologists notice this as a reoccurring tendency, a tendency of the decline of a society being reflected in the quality of the artwork it produces. And with that, I will leave you for today. Thanks for watching and see you soon.